Hey, welcome back to Pop Culture Graveyard. Hollis here in our new apartment in NYC. It's not really new, but it's new for us. We enjoyed our drive cross country, but we are thrilled to finally be in our new apartment. It doesn't feel like our new apartment because the movers are coming tomorrow with all of our stuff. So I apologize for the echo, but my voice has no furniture to bounce off of. The big problem and the first order of business is to find out which wall is going to be the records wall. We have a few to choose from, but there are two main ones that seem up to the task. At first I was thinking this longer wall might be the one, but I think this second, slightly less long wall is the sweet spot because the sun does not directly hit it. And as you can see, there's plenty of sun in this place. We think we're going to be very happy here. It's got a gorgeous view in the daytime. It's got an even more gorgeous view in the evening. In any case, as you know, I packed up most of my records. I didn't do the final box count on my vinyl collection because the entire apartment was littered with boxes of all sizes. I couldn't even get to it. But I'd say I packed up somewhere in the neighborhood of 50-something boxes of vinyl records. But surprise, that was not all my vinyl. There were some records that I would not trust with the movers. I had to bring them with me in the trunk of the car. So I filled my DJ cases, some of which are now holding up our television, with my most precious vinyl. I have an entire box of records filled with unopened SST pressings, even my Miles Davis kind of blue UHQR I brought with me, and luckily I saved the box it came in, so that was very easy. And bottom line, all of the records I brought in my trunk are basically the nucleus of a great record collection. Should anything horrible befall all of the records that the movers are bringing, you can never be too careful, especially with your most precious vinyl. So this week, since I don't have anything else here, I thought I'd show you some of my most precious vinyl that I would not trust anyone else to handle. So join me for some of my best vinyl. Echo, echo. Before we get rolling, I just want to thank my latest patron. Thank you, Greg. I'm very grateful for your patronage, Mr. Newman, and I got nothing but love for you and the state you live in. If you're enjoying the content I'm bringing you and would like to help support the show, please consider joining my Patreon. It's at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard. And thanks. Okay, let's get to the vinyl. I'm going to start out with some jazz. Up first, Felonious Monk, Brilliant Corners. This record is a masterpiece, and in my opinion, Monk's most cohesive album. It features two of my favorite sidemen he ever worked with, Sonny Rollins and Clark Terry. This is my Japanese pressing, which is in near mint condition, and I would be heartbroken if it were to become damaged in transit. And so I brought it with me. As long as I'm talking about Japanese pressings, Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, Moanin'. This is a lot of people's favorite jazz album. It is at least my favorite Art Blakey album, and it is definitely in my top 25, perhaps, jazz albums, and I'm a real sucker for an Obi strip. Blue Lights by Kenny Burrell. Kenny Burrell is, of course, the brilliant guitarist behind such classics as Midnight Blue. Speaking of Midnight Blue, I brought that one as well. It's in phenomenal shape and is probably as close as I'll ever come to owning a Warhol. That's right, Andy Warhol did this cover, as you can see from his signature, and I think it's just delightful. It's got a hint of Picasso and a hint of Playboy, and that is a magical mixture. Anyway, I was careful with this one because, given the Warhol cover, even the represses of this are becoming very precious. Bill Evans, Jim Hall, Undercurrent. This is one of my all-time favorite jazz albums. The music within lives up to the hauntingly beautiful picture that graces the cover. This is a Canadian pressing. I was able to get it because the B-side is scratched, but luckily for me, it does not sound. I took a chance on it, hoping that the seller was overestimating the damage, and he was. I do that sometimes. I will read all of the feedback on a seller on Discogs, and if it seems like that seller is an undergrader and is overly descriptive with problems, I will take a chance that he is overemphasizing what's wrong with the record, And more often than not, from those buyers, I get reasonably priced records in exceptional condition, and this is no different. It's got a little sticker on the front that I am loath to remove because I want to wait until my hairdryer arrives so I can do it right. But this is in gorgeous condition. As you can see, it has the CBC imprint pressed into the label itself. It's got the deep groove, and these have become very expensive, and I really wasn't going to take a chance with it. I'm just going to do a couple more jazz records, one step beyond Jackie McLean. I was very happy to get this United Artists era pressing. This is one album you just don't see around. When you do, it's usually on eBay for a lot of money. Likewise, Groshan Mankour III, who has become one of my favorite artists. He's a little outside, but he is just the coolest. This is Some Other Stuff, the album he made after Evolution, which is highly prized by collectors. But I really like this album with Wayne Shorter, Herbie Hancock, Cecil McBee, and Anthony Williams, the great Tony Williams on drums. If you ever feel like jazz is becoming boring, seek out this album. Let's rock and roll. This is my Roxy Music original British pressing with the pink-rimmed island labels, which are my favorite labels of all time, just edging out the Atlantic labels from the 60s. Yes, I'm that geeky, I have favorite labels. I also packed For Your Pleasure. These are my two favorite Roxy Music albums, and I can sum up why in one word: Eno. Anyway, they are in stellar condition, and I wouldn't trust them to anyone but Hollis James Movers. Julie Ruin, the solo album by Kathleen Hanna that she did after Bikini Kill, under the pseudonym of Julie Ruin. This is a phenomenal album, taped by herself in her bedroom. Very cool songs, minimalist, yet at the same time, it packs a real sonic punch. This album is exactly what you would think it is. In this album is the DNA for Le Tigre. And although I'm a massive Bikini Kill fan and a big Le Tigre fan, this may be my favorite thing she's ever done. And that is saying something, because I love Kathleen Hanna. Sorry, Ma, forgot to take out the trash. I'm showing you this album because it is representative of all of my replacements albums, which I brought with me. They are all original twin tone records, and the thought of these being damaged or lost was terrifying to me. So they came with me. And that included replacements records of all colors. Sparks Indiscreet. This is another representative album in that I brought every Sparks album with me. I only have about 12 or 13 of their albums, but each one is precious and very hard to find in fantastic condition, so I took no chances. Ditto that for my Smiths albums. I tracked down all the original British pressings on Rough Trade for the Smiths, simply because they're a top 5 band for me. My entire high school years were spent invariably clad in a Smiths t-shirt, of which I had about a dozen that I would rotate, blue jeans, low-cut black Doc Martens, and old thrift store blazers. That was my uniform for a lot of high school. And I'm very grateful to the Smiths for getting me through high school, so I wouldn't take any chances with them. Incidentally, there is a Smiths episode in the pipeline, so if you're a Smiths fan, please look forward to that. Andy Warhol's Velvet Underground and Nico. This is a compilation that was put out in Britain that is, I think, a real triumph of packaging. I love the Warhol Coke bottle designs. It folds out, it is glorious, it's in great shape, it's on MGM Records, and it is representative of my entire Velvet Underground collection because I have many precious pressings and am terrified of anything happening to them. Let's change it up a little from the Velvet Underground to the Monkees. This is the Changes album, the last official Monkees album before they reformed in the 80s. And by this time, the Monkees were down to Davy Jones and Mickey Dolenz. First of all, a quick artistic note about this album. I love this album. The song Ferry Ride is one of my favorites on this album. Listen to that if you want to know what this album sounds like. It is a collection of odds and sods, some of which were taped many, many years earlier. Some music was recycled, but the boys did admirable jobs on this album. Anyway, the reason I'm showing it is the Cold Gems edition of Changes is very rare in the Monkees catalog. There weren't a lot of these produced back in the day, because the Monkees' popularity was at an all-time low. This album wasn't so much released as it escaped. And the thing that makes it so precious is because there weren't a lot of these, when it went out of print, it became scarce. And when it was time for Rhino to do the reissues, they could not get the master tapes, which were either damaged or lost. And so what happened is all of the Rhino pressings are taken from a Cold Gems record. So you're just getting a copy of this record. You're not getting the actual master tape on the Rhino releases. So I brought a lot of my rarer Monkees things with me, including changes. Bad Brains, Punk Note Edition. This is on green vinyl. And Rock for Light. This is on yellow vinyl. And when I showed up here, lo and behold, the Punk Note Edition of the Quickness album beat me here and was waiting for me as a sort of housewarming gift. These albums not only look really cool, they sound amazing. And from Bad Brains to Gil Scott-Heron and Brian Jackson, it seems like a seamless transition from one group of geniuses to the next. This is a promotional copy of Gil and Brian's Midnight Band, the first minute of a New Day album, and this is representative of my entire Gil Scott-Heron album collection, which I brought with me. Because the older I get, the more I realize that my favorite artists are the only ones that I truly need. Don't get me wrong, I want all of my records to get here safely. But if the truck bringing them here, God forbid, fell off a cliff, I would survive. If you would like to see the full episode, please join my Patreon at patreon.com/popculturegraveyard or click above for more cool content.